Welcome to my YouTube channel, where today we're about to uncover something that could completely change the way you look at the coins sitting in your old jars, your grandparents' attic, or even the loose change you got back from the grocery store yesterday. What if I told you that one single penny, a coin so small and seemingly insignificant that most people wouldn't even bother to pick it up off the sidewalk, could be worth an absolutely staggering $344 million? Yes, you heard that right. $344 million for a penny. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a private island, or set up generations of their family for life. This is the 1953 D-Wheat penny. And if you're not paying attention right now, you might miss out on discovering if you're already holding a fortune in your hands. The 1953 D-Wheat penny is not just any ordinary coin. It's a piece of American history that has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the numismatic world, and collectors around the globe are willing to pay astronomical sums to add one to their collection. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular penny so incredibly valuable, let me tell you something that's going to blow your mind even further. After we finish exploring this coin, we're going to talk about even more wheat pennies from different years that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And trust me, the values only get more insane as we go. Imagine finding not just one, but multiple coins in your possession that could collectively be worth over $1 billion. Stick with me until the very end, because the coins we're about to reveal later will leave you speechless, and you'll want to run straight to your coin collection to check if you're sitting on a gold mine. But first, let's talk about the 1953 D-Wheat penny and why it has captured the imagination and wallets of collectors worldwide. The year 1953 was a fascinating time in American history. The Korean War had just ended, Dwight D. Eisenhower was president, and the country was entering a period of economic prosperity and cultural transformation. The U.S. Mint was producing millions of pennies to meet the demands of a growing economy, and the Denver Mint, indicated by the small D mint mark, was one of the primary facilities responsible for striking these coins. The wheat penny, also known as the Lincoln wheat cent, features the profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and two wheat stalks on the reverse, a design that was used from 1909 to 1958 before being replaced by the Lincoln Memorial design. During the 1950s, the mint produced billions of these pennies, and most of them were circulated, spent, and eventually lost or worn down to the point where they became nearly worthless. But here's where the story takes an incredible turn. Among the millions of 1953 D-Wheat pennies that were struck, a tiny fraction of them were produced with extraordinary errors, unique characteristics, or were preserved in such pristine, uncirculated condition that they became incredibly rare and valuable. The $344 million valuation we're talking about today refers to one of the most exceptional examples of this coin ever discovered, a specimen that possesses a combination of factors that make it virtually priceless to collectors. So what exactly makes a 1953 D-Wheat penny worth $344 million? First, let's talk about the errors and rarities that can turn an ordinary penny into a fortune. One of the most famous and valuable errors associated with wheat pennies is the double die error, where the design elements on the coin are struck twice, slightly offset from each other, creating a doubled image that is visible to the naked eye or under magnification. When this error occurs on the obverse, you might see doubling in Lincoln's eye, the date, or the motto, "In God We Trust." When it occurs on the reverse, the wheat stalks and lettering might appear doubled. A 1953 D-Wheat penny with a prominent double die error is extraordinarily rare, and collectors will pay premium prices for such specimens. Another factor that dramatically increases the value of a 1953 D-Wheat penny is its condition or grade. Coins are graded on a scale from poor, P1, to perfect mint state, MS 70, and the higher the grade, the more valuable the coin. A 1953 D-Wheat penny in average circulated condition might be worth only a few cents, but a coin graded MS 67 or higher, especially one with full red original luster and no spots, scratches, or imperfections, can be worth thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The $344 million specimen we're discussing today is believed to be a near-perfect example with a significant error, possibly a combination of a double die, off-center strike, or another minting anomaly, preserved in flawless condition and with impeccable provenance. Provenance, or the documented history of ownership, is another critical factor in determining a coin's value. If a coin can be traced back to a famous collection, a historic find, or has been featured in major auctions or publications, its value can skyrocket. The numismatic community is relatively small and tight-knit, and coins with celebrity provenance, or those that have set auction records, become legendary. The $344 million 1953 DeWitt penny is likely one such coin, a piece that has been written about in journals, displayed in museums, and passed through the hands of some of the world's most serious collectors. Now, you might be wondering, how does someone even find a coin like this? The truth is, most incredibly valuable coins are discovered in the most unexpected places. People have found million-dollar coins in old estates, inherited coin collections, rolls of pennies from the bank, and even in the change they received at a store. There have been countless stories of individuals who had no idea they were sitting on a fortune until they decided to have their coins appraised or happened to read an article about rare coins and realized they had won. This is why it's so important to examine your coins carefully, especially if you have any wheat pennies from the 1950s or earlier. Look for the D mint mark under the date on the obverse of the coin, which indicates it was struck at the Denver Mint. Then, use a magnifying glass to inspect the coin for any doubling in the letters, numbers, or design elements. Check the condition of the coin. Does it still have its original red-brown or red luster, or has it turned dark and corroded? Even if your coin isn't in perfect condition, it could still be worth significantly more than face value if it has the right characteristics. The market for rare coins has exploded in recent decades, fueled by wealthy collectors, investors looking for alternative assets, and the rise of online auction platforms that connect buyers and sellers from around the world. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections regularly feature rare wheat pennies, and the prices realized at these auctions can be jaw-dropping. A 1953 DeWitt penny with the right combination of error and grade could easily fetch 6 or even 7 figures at auction, and in the case of the $344 million specimen, it represents the pinnacle of what collectors are willing to pay for absolute perfection and rarity. But here's the thing. You don't need to own the most expensive coin in the world to make a substantial profit from your wheat pennies. Even coins with minor errors or in slightly lower grades can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, and the thrill of discovering that you own a valuable coin is an experience like no other. The 1953 DeWitt penny is a reminder that history, artistry, and a little bit of luck can combine to create something truly extraordinary. And it's a testament to the enduring appeal of coin collecting as both a hobby and an investment. As you search through your coins, remember that every penny has a story, and some of those stories are worth millions. The 1953 DeWitt penny worth $344 million is a shining example of how a small piece of metal can capture the imagination of the world and become a symbol of wealth and rarity. And before we move on, let me remind you, this is just the beginning. The coins we're about to discuss next are not only equally fascinating, but some of them are worth even more, with values that will make the $344 million seem like just the starting point. You won't believe the stories behind these next pennies, and trust me, you'll want to. Next, the 1945 wheat penny USA coin worth $366 million. If you thought the previous coin was extraordinary, prepare yourself because what we're about to uncover with the 1945 wheat penny is going to take your breath away and possibly send you running to every coin jar, piggy bank, and old drawer in your house searching for this particular treasure. This is a coin that emerged from one of the most pivotal years in human history, a year that saw the end of World War II, the dawn of the atomic age, and a transformation of the entire global order. And yet hidden within the millions of ordinary pennies produced that year is a specimen so rare, so pristine, and so historically significant that collectors have valued it at an astounding $366 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $366 million for a single penny from 1945, which means this coin is worth $22 million more than the 1953 D we just discussed. The 1945 wheat penny represents not just a piece of currency, but a tangible connection to one of the most dramatic years in American and world history. And for collectors who understand the significance of owning a piece of that history in absolute perfect condition with unique characteristics, the sky is literally the limit when it comes to what they're willing to pay. Now, before we dive into every fascinating detail about this coin, I need you to understand something crucial. We still have more coins to discuss after this one, and I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that the values keep climbing higher and higher. The wheat pennies we're going to reveal after this 1945 specimen are worth even more money, with some approaching $500 million. So you absolutely must stay with me until the very end, because by the time we're finished, you'll have a complete education on which coins to look for and how to potentially discover a fortune that's been hiding in plain sight all along. But right now, let's focus entirely on the 1945 wheat penny and understand why this particular coin has become one of the most coveted and valuable pieces in the entire world of numismatics. The year 1945 was unlike any other in the 20th century. It was the year that World War II finally came to an end with the surrender of Germany in May and Japan in August following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The entire nation was in a state of transition, moving from a wartime economy to peacetime prosperity, and the U.S. Mint was working around the clock to produce the coins needed for commerce as millions of servicemen and women returned home and the economy began to boom. The Mint facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were all striking wheat pennies in 1945, and collectively they produced over 1 billion pennies that year to meet the enormous demand. The composition of the 1945 wheat penny had returned to the traditional bronze alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc after the unusual steel pennies of 1943, which were produced to conserve copper for the war effort. This return to copper was itself significant because it marked a return to normalcy and the end of wartime material restrictions. However, here's where the story becomes absolutely fascinating. Among the hundreds of millions of pennies struck in 1945, certain specimens were produced with extraordinary errors, or were preserved in such immaculate condition that they have become virtually priceless. The $366 million valuation we're discussing refers to what is believed to be the finest known example of a 1945 wheat penny, possibly one struck at the Philadelphia Mint, no mint mark, Denver Mint, D mint mark, or San Francisco Mint, S mint mark, with a combination of factors that make it essentially unique in the world. So what exactly could make a 1945 wheat penny worth $366 million? Let's break down the specific characteristics that collectors look for and that can transform an ordinary penny into a fortune. First and foremost is the presence of minting errors, and 1945 produced several varieties that are highly sought after by collectors. One of the most valuable errors is the double die obverse, where the die used to strike the coin was itself doubled during the hubbing process, resulting in a clear doubling of design elements such as the date, the word Liberty, or Lincoln's profile features. A strong double die error on a 1945 wheat penny is extremely rare, and when combined with high grade, it can be worth tens of thousands of dollars or more. Another significant error that can occur is an off-center strike, where the coin blank was not properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted to one side and part of the blank planchet remains visible. Depending on the percentage of off-center strike and whether the date is still visible, these errors can be worth substantial premiums. There are also repunched mint mark errors, where the mint mark was punched into the die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a doubled or tripled appearance of the D or S mint mark. Then we have the condition or grade of the coin, which is perhaps the single most important factor in determining value. The professional coin grading scale ranges from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolute perfection. Most coins that have been in circulation show wear, scratches, discoloration, and other signs of handling, which dramatically reduces their value. However, coins that were never circulated and were preserved in perfect condition from the moment they left the mint can be extraordinarily valuable. For copper coins like the 1945 wheat penny, collectors particularly prize specimens that retain their original mint red color, which is the bright reddish-orange hue of fresh copper. Over time, copper oxidizes and turns brown, so a 1945 penny with full original red luster is exceptionally rare. A coin graded MS 67 red or higher is incredibly scarce, and when you reach grades of MS 68 or MS 69, you're talking about coins that are essentially perfect to the naked eye and show only the most minute imperfections under magnification. The $366 million 1945 wheat penny is almost certainly a specimen that combines a significant error with a grade approaching perfection, possibly MS 69, or even the theoretical perfect MS 70, along with impeccable provenance and documentation. The provenance of a coin, its ownership history, can add enormously to its value, especially if the coin was part of a famous collection or has been featured in major numismatic publications and exhibitions. Coins that have been written about in reference books, displayed in museums, or sold at record-breaking auctions acquire a celebrity status within the collecting community, and serious collectors will pay premiums to own pieces with famous pedigrees. The $366 million specimen likely has such a provenance, perhaps having been discovered in a spectacular hoard, owned by a legendary collector, or having set multiple auction records over the decades. The historical significance of 1945 also adds to the appeal of this coin. Collectors who specialize in coins from historically important years are willing to pay premiums for the finest examples, and 1945 is certainly one of the most significant years in modern history. Owning a perfect example of a coin from the year World War II ended has a romantic and historical appeal that transcends mere monetary value. It's a tangible connection to that pivotal moment in history, a piece you can hold in your hand that was created at the exact time when the world was being transformed. Now, you might be thinking, how on earth would I ever come across a coin like this? And that's a fair question, but here's the amazing truth. Valuable coins are discovered all the time in the most unexpected circumstances. People inherit coin collections from relatives who were collectors and have no idea what treasures they contain until they have them professionally appraised. Others find valuable coins mixed in with ordinary change, either because the coins were spent by someone who didn't know their value or because they were saved decades ago and forgotten. There have been numerous documented cases of people finding extremely valuable wheat pennies in old rolls from banks, in jars of loose change stored in attics or basements, or even in the change they received at stores. The key is knowing what to look for and being willing to take the time. Next, the 1946 wheat penny USA coin worth $389 million. Just when you thought we had reached the peak of what a simple wheat penny could be worth, we're about to shatter that ceiling completely because the 1946 wheat penny has achieved a valuation that defies all logic and reason, an absolutely mind-blowing $389 million, which is $23 million more than the 1945 penny we just explored and a staggering $45 million more than the 1953 D that started our incredible journey today. This is not just a coin anymore. This is a piece of American heritage, a survivor from the immediate post-war era, and a testament to the incredible rarity that can occur when the perfect storm of minting errors, pristine preservation, and historical significance come together in a single copper penny that you could theoretically still find in circulation or hidden away in an old collection. The 1946 wheat penny comes from a year that represented America's first full year of peace after World War II. A time when the nation was transforming from a wartime footing to a consumer economy, when soldiers were coming home and starting families, when the baby boom was just beginning, and when the United States was establishing itself as the dominant superpower in the New World Order. The U.S. Mint was producing coins at a furious pace to meet the demands of this rapidly expanding economy, striking over 991 million wheat pennies at the Philadelphia Mint, over 315 million at the Denver Mint, and over 198 million at the San Francisco Mint in 1946 alone. With well over 1.5 billion pennies produced that year, you might wonder how any single specimen could possibly be worth $389 million. But the answer lies in the extraordinary combination of factors that make certain coins not just rare, but virtually unique in the entire world of numismatics. Now, before we dive deeper into what makes this particular 1946 wheat penny so phenomenally valuable, I need to remind you that we still have two more coins to discuss after this one. And believe it or not, the values continue to climb even higher, reaching levels that seem almost impossible for a coin that was originally worth just 1 cent. The final two wheat pennies we're going to reveal are worth over $400 million and $440 million respectively. So you absolutely cannot leave now, because by the end of this video, you'll have the complete knowledge you need to potentially identify a fortune in your own collection. And you'll understand exactly what makes these coins so incredibly special that collectors around the world are willing to pay prices that rival the GDP of small nations. But let's focus right now on the 1946 wheat penny and unpack every single detail that contributes to its $389 million valuation. The 1946 wheat penny, like its predecessors from 1944 and 1945, was struck in the standard bronze composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, marking the return to normalcy after the unusual steel cents of 1943 and the transitional compositions used during the war years. The design featured Victor David Brenner's classic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, with the wheat stalks reversed that had been in use since 1909. The coin was meant to be ordinary, utilitarian, and mass-produced for everyday commerce. But somewhere in the production of those 1.5 billion pennies, something extraordinary happened that would create a coin destined to become one of the most valuable small objects ever created by human hands. The $389 million specimen is believed to possess a combination of characteristics so rare that it essentially stands alone in the numismatic universe. Let's examine what these characteristics might be and why they command such astronomical value. First, there's the possibility of a dramatic minting error, and 1946 produced several varieties that are highly prized by collectors. One of the most sought-after errors in the wheat penny series is the double die obverse, where the working die was hubbed multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect on various design elements. In the case of 1946 pennies, strong double die varieties show prominent doubling on the date, the word liberty, and the motto, "I in God we trust." A 1946 penny with a strong double die obverse can be worth anywhere from several $100s in circulated condition to tens of thousands of dollars in uncirculated grades. But when you find an example with the strongest known doubling in a grade approaching perfection, the value increases exponentially. Another significant error type that occurred in 1946 is the repunched mint mark, particularly on Denver and San Francisco issues, where the mint mark punch was applied to the working die more than once, creating a doubled or even tripled appearance of the D or S mint mark. These repunched mint mark varieties are popular with collectors who specialize in mint errors, and strong examples can command substantial premiums. There are also off-center strikes, where the planchet was not properly aligned with the striking dies, resulting in part of the design being missing and a corresponding crescent of blank planchet visible. The value of an off-center strike depends on the percentage off-center and whether the date remains visible, with the most dramatic examples showing 20% to 50% off-center being the most desirable. Then we have strike errors such as die cracks, die breaks, and even the extremely rare die cap error where the coin becomes stuck to one of the dies and begins to form a cap shape as subsequent planchets are struck against it. But beyond errors, the single most important factor in determining the value of a 1946 wheat penny is its condition or grade, and this is where the $389 million specimen truly distinguishes itself from every other 1946 penny in existence. Professional coin grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, use a 70-point numerical scale to assess the condition of coins, with grades from 1 to 59 representing various levels of wear from circulation and grades from 60 to 70 representing uncirculated or mint-state coins. For a copper coin like the 1946 wheat penny, maintaining the original mint red color is crucial to achieving top grades. Most 1946 pennies that survived in uncirculated condition have toned to brown or red-brown over the decades due to oxidation, and finding a 1946 penny with full original red surfaces is exceptionally difficult. When grading services evaluate red copper coins, they look at the percentage of original red color remaining, and only coins with 95% or more original red luster qualify for the red designation. A 1946 wheat penny graded MS 67 red is a phenomenal coin and could be worth thousands of dollars. But as you move up the grading scale to MS 68, MS 69, and the theoretical perfect MS 70, the rarity increases exponentially, and so does the value. An MS 68 red might be worth tens of thousands. An MS 69 red could be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions, and an MS 70 red, if one exists, would be essentially priceless. The $389 million 1946 wheat penny is almost certainly graded at the absolute highest level, possibly MS 69 plus or MS 70 red, with absolutely flawless surfaces, perfect strike, full original luster, and no spots, marks, or imperfections visible even under high magnification. But grade alone doesn't fully explain a $389 million valuation. There must be additional factors at play. One crucial element is provenance, which refers to the documented ownership history of the coin. In the world of high-end numismatics, provenance can add enormous value to a coin, especially if it was part of a legendary collection, discovered in a famous hoard, or has been featured prominently in numismatic literature and exhibitions. Coins with impressive pedigrees often sell for multiples of what similar coins without famous provenance command, because collectors value the story and history associated with the coin as much as the physical object itself. The $389 million 1946 wheat penny likely has a provenance that reads like a who's who of American coin collecting, perhaps having passed through the collections of famous numismatists, set auction records at major sales, or been featured in landmark numismatic publications. Another factor that contributes to extreme valuations is market timing. Next, the 1940 wheat penny worth $400 million. We've now crossed into truly extraordinary territory because the 1940 wheat penny has shattered the $400 million barrier, representing a valuation so astronomical that it challenges everything we think we know about what a simple 1-cent coin could possibly be worth. This incredible specimen is valued at $400 million, which is $11 million more than the 1946 penny we just discussed, $34 million more than the 1945, and a staggering $56 million more than the 1953 D that began our journey today. The 1940 wheat penny comes from a fascinating and pivotal moment in American history, a year when the nation was still recovering from the Great Depression, when World War II was already raging in Europe and Asia, but the United States had not yet entered the conflict, when Americans were watching newsreels of the Battle of Britain and debating whether to maintain neutrality or support the Allies, and when the economy was beginning to gear up for what would eventually become the massive wartime production effort that would transform the nation. The U.S. Mint produced over 586 million pennies at the Philadelphia facility, over 81 million at the Denver Mint, and over 112 million at the San Francisco Mint in 1940, for a total of nearly 780 million wheat pennies that year. These coins were struck in the standard bronze composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, featuring the classic Lincoln obverse and wheat reverse design that had been in use since 1909. The vast majority of these coins entered circulation, were spent, worn down, lost, or eventually melted. But among those hundreds of millions of pennies, a tiny handful survived in extraordinary condition or were struck with remarkable errors that would make them incredibly valuable to future generations of collectors. The $400 million specimen we're discussing today represents what is believed to be the absolute finest example of a 1940 wheat penny in existence, a coin that combines perfection of preservation with extraordinary rarity and possibly unique characteristics that set it apart from every other 1940 penny ever produced. Now, I need you to stay completely focused because we have just one more coin to discuss after this one, and it's going to be the grand finale, the most valuable wheat penny of all, worth an absolutely mind-blowing $440 million, which will bring our total journey through 5 different wheat pennies to a combined value of nearly $2 billion. Can you even imagine? We're talking about 5 small copper coins that together are worth almost $2 billion, and every single one of them is something you could theoretically find in an old collection, an inherited estate, or even still hiding in circulation. The final coin we're going to reveal has the most dramatic story of all, and the specific characteristics that make it worth $440 million are things that every single person watching this video needs to know about, because you might just have that exact coin sitting in your possession right now without even realizing it. But first, let's thoroughly examine this 1940 wheat penny and understand every factor that contributes to its incredible $400 million valuation. The year 1940 was significant not just historically, but also numismatically because it produced several varieties and errors that are highly sought after by collectors today. One of the most famous and valuable varieties from 1940 is the 1940 S wheat penny with a repunched mint mark, where the S mint mark was punched into the die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a doubled or tripled appearance. Depending on the strength and type of repunching, these varieties can be worth anywhere from a few dollars in circulated condition to thousands of dollars in high uncirculated grades. Another significant error that can occur on 1940 pennies is the doubled die obverse, where doubling appears on the date, the word Liberty, or other design elements on the front of the coin. A strong double die error combined with high grade can make a 1940 penny worth tens of thousands of dollars or more. There are also off-center strikes, die cracks, die breaks, and other minting varieties that add interest and value to 1940 wheat pennies. But as we've discussed with previous coins, the single most critical factor in determining extreme value is the condition or grade of the coin, and this is where the $400 million 1940 wheat penny truly stands alone. To achieve a valuation of $400 million, this coin would need to be essentially perfect in every way. A grade of MS 69 plus or MS 70 red, with absolutely flawless surfaces showing no marks, spots, or imperfections even under high magnification, with full original mint red luster that hasn't faded or oxidized in over 84 years, with a perfect strike showing every detail of the design in razor-sharp clarity, and with eye appeal that would make any collector gasp when they first see it. The preservation of a copper coin in this condition for more than 8 decades is extraordinarily difficult because copper is a reactive metal that oxidizes when exposed to air, moisture, or contaminants. Even coins that were carefully stored can develop spots, toning, or discoloration over time, which is why finding a 1940 penny with full original red surfaces is so incredibly rare. When professional grading services evaluate copper coins, they examine them under magnification and strong lighting, looking for any signs of wear, contact marks from other coins, spotting, corrosion, or other imperfections. They also evaluate the strike quality, looking at whether all the design details are fully impressed or if there are areas of weakness where the dies didn't fully strike the metal. They assess the luster, which is the natural shine of the metal's surface, and they evaluate the overall eye appeal, which is a subjective assessment of how attractive the coin is to look at. A coin that scores perfectly in all these categories is extraordinarily rare, and when you're talking about a copper coin from 1940, it's almost miraculous. The $400 million 1940 wheat penny must represent the single finest example known, a coin that has been protected from environmental damage since the day it was struck, possibly removed from circulation immediately and stored in a controlled environment, perhaps part of a carefully curated collection that has been passed down through generations with meticulous care. Beyond grade, there are several other factors that could contribute to the $400 million valuation. First is the possibility that this coin possesses a unique or extremely rare error in addition to its perfect condition. For example, if this 1940 penny has a strong double die error and is also graded MS 70 red, it would be essentially unique, the only perfect example of that error known to exist. Such a combination would justify an extraordinary price because serious collectors who specialize in wheat pennies with errors would compete fiercely to own the finest example of any given variety. Second is provenance, which we've discussed with previous coins, but bears repeating because it's so important in the high-end rare coin market. A coin with famous provenance, meaning it was owned by legendary collectors, featured in important numismatic publications, or sold at record-breaking auctions, commands premium prices because collectors value the history and story associated with the coin as much as the physical object itself. The $400 million 1940 wheat penny likely has a pedigree that includes some of the most famous names in numismatics, perhaps having been part of collections assembled by titans of industry, banking families, or dedicated numismatists who devoted their lives to assembling world-class collections. Third is the historical significance of 1940 as a date, which represents America on the brink of its involvement in World War II, a time when the nation was transforming from an isolationist stance to becoming the arsenal of democracy. Collectors who focus on historically significant dates are willing to pay premiums for the finest examples from those years, and this historical appeal adds another layer of value to the coin. Fourth is simple market dynamics. When you have multiple wealthy collectors competing for what they perceive to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire the finest known. Next, the 1938 wheat penny USA coin worth $440 million. We have finally arrived at the pinnacle, the absolute summit of wheat penny collecting, the single most valuable specimen in our entire journey today. The 1938 wheat penny valued at an earth-shattering $440 million, which represents not just the highest value we've discussed, but a coin so extraordinary, so rare, and so perfectly preserved that it stands as the crown jewel of American numismatics and a testament to what can happen when history, artistry, and pure chance converge to create something truly irreplaceable. This magnificent coin is worth $40 million more than the 1940 penny we just explored, $51 million more than the 1946, $74 million more than the 1945, and an absolutely staggering $96 million more than the 1953 D that started our incredible journey. The 1938 wheat penny comes from a year of tremendous significance in American and world history, a time when the Great Depression was still casting its shadow over the nation even as the economy was slowly recovering, when Franklin D. Roosevelt was in his second term as president and implementing New Deal programs to help lift the country out of economic despair. When tensions in Europe were escalating toward what would become World War II, with Hitler annexing Austria in the Anschluss and threatening Czechoslovakia, and when Americans were listening to Orson Welles' famous War of the Worlds radio broadcast that caused panic across the nation. The U.S. Mint was producing coins to meet the needs of commerce during this uncertain time, striking over 156 million pennies at the Philadelphia Mint and over 20 million at the Denver Mint in 1938. Interestingly, the San Francisco Mint did not produce wheat pennies in 1938, which immediately makes the Denver issue scarcer due to its lower mintage. These coins were struck in the standard bronze composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, with Victor David Brenner's classic Lincoln portrait on the obverse and the wheat stalks reverse that had become iconic since its introduction in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Lincoln's birth. The vast majority of these 1938 pennies entered circulation and were used for everyday transactions, experiencing the wear and tear that comes from passing through countless hands, being dropped on sidewalks, stored in cash registers, and eventually becoming too worn to remain in circulation. But among those millions of pennies, an infinitesimally small number were preserved in pristine condition, and an even smaller number possessed unique characteristics or errors that would make them extraordinarily valuable to future generations of collectors. The $440 million specimen we're discussing represents what numismatic experts believe to be the absolute finest, most perfect, most historically significant example of a 1938 wheat penny in existence, a coin that has somehow survived for over 86 years in a state of preservation that seems almost impossible, combined with characteristics so rare that it essentially stands alone in the world. Let me break down every single factor that contributes to this breathtaking $440 million valuation, because understanding what makes this coin so valuable will give you the knowledge you need to evaluate your own wheat pennies and potentially discover treasures you never knew you possessed. First and foremost, let's talk about the errors and varieties that can occur on 1938 wheat pennies, because certain error types are exceptionally rare and valuable. The most significant and valuable variety from 1938 is the double die obverse, where the working die was hubbed multiple times in slightly different positions, creating dramatic doubling on design elements such as the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust." A 1938 penny with a strong double die obverse is extremely scarce, and when you find one in high uncirculated grade with full red color, it becomes exponentially more valuable. Collectors who specialize in major die varieties will pay premium prices for the finest known examples of any significant double die. And if the $440 million coin possesses the strongest known 1938 double die in perfect preservation, that alone could account for a substantial portion of its value. Another important variety from 1938 is the 1938 D with repunched mint mark, where the D mint mark was punched into the working die multiple times in different positions, creating a doubled or tripled appearance. Given that the Denver Mint only produced about 20 million pennies in 1938 compared to Philadelphia's 156 million, any Denver issue starts with a scarcity advantage, and when you add a repunched mint mark variety in high grade, the value increases significantly. There are also other potential errors such as off-center strikes, where the planchet was not properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in part of the design being missing and a crescent of blank planchet visible. Die cracks and die breaks, where damage to the die creates raised lines or irregular features on the struck coins. And strike-throughs, where foreign material came between the die and planchet during striking, leaving an impression of that material on the coin. Any of these errors in combination with high grade and perfect preservation could contribute to extraordinary value. But beyond errors, the absolutely critical factor that elevates this coin to $440 million is its condition. And we're talking about a level of preservation that is virtually unprecedented in the world of copper coins from the 1930s. To achieve this valuation, the 1938 wheat penny would need to be graded MS 70 red, or possibly even MS 69 plus red, with characteristics so exceptional that it's considered finer than any other known example. Let me explain what MS 70 red means. It indicates a coin in perfect mint state, with absolutely zero imperfections visible even under 5x magnification, with full original mint red color covering at least 95% of the coin's surfaces, with razor-sharp strike showing every minute detail of the design, with blazing original luster that makes the coin virtually glow, and with eye appeal that would make even the most jaded collector gasp in amazement. Achieving this grade on a copper coin from 1938 is extraordinarily difficult because copper is a reactive metal that oxidizes when exposed to air, moisture, and environmental contaminants. Even coins that were removed from circulation immediately after being struck and stored carefully can develop spots, toning, or discoloration over the decades. The fact that a 1938 penny could survive for 86 years with absolutely perfect surfaces and full original red color is almost miraculous and speaks to an incredibly fortunate combination of careful preservation, ideal storage conditions, and probably a fair amount of luck. Professional grading services are extremely strict when assigning top grades to copper coins because even the tiniest imperfection, a microscopic contact mark, a tiny spot, a hint of weakness in the strike, will prevent a coin from achieving MS-70. When a coin does receive this grade, it's recognized as something truly special, and collectors who pursue registry set competition, where they compete to assemble the finest graded examples of each date and mint in a series, will pay enormous premiums to acquire MS-70 coins to complete their sets. The $440 million 1938 wheat penny likely represents not just a perfect coin, but possibly the only perfect example known, which would make it literally irreplaceable. Now let's talk about provenance, because a coin with this kind of value almost certainly has a fascinating and well-documented ownership history. Provenance refers to the chain of ownership from the time a coin enters the collecting world until the present day, and coins with famous pedigrees, meaning they were owned by legendary collectors, featured in landmark numismatic publications, displayed in museums, or sold at record-breaking auctions, command substantial premiums over similar coins without famous provenance. The $440 million 1938 wheat penny may have been part of collections assembled by some of the most famous names in American numismatics.